Hi guys, and welcome back to Pass and Move. And for today's episode in the Premier League series, we've got Manchester City for this tactics and team guide episode. Very interesting team obviously to take over, and they are the 11th team for us to cover in the series, of course. So, if we're doing it in alphabetical order for anyone who's missed the other episodes, so we've covered these top 10 teams here already. So if your teams are one of the teams here, you can definitely go check out that episode. And if your team is one of these ones here, then we will get around to it. But first for today, Manchester City. Now, City, of course, rising to power in recent times, recent history. So you can even just see it through the little curve here. And the real goal for you here, if you do take over Manchester City, even though the board will be probably, well, I'm assuming, I haven't actually checked, but they probably will be aiming for Champions League, trying to win a Champions League title or anything. I don't think the board will outright say that, but in real life, the owners are looking for some type to add the Champions League trophy to their cabinet. But in terms of yourself, if you ask me, you should be trying to get some sort of dominance over the league. So Manchester City won it in 2011-2012 for the first time in ages. Then they won it again in 2013-14. But after that, it's just been a bit quiet. So if you say from about 2011 to about this season here, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 seasons, and you've won it twice. So even though it's really great that you've won the Premier League and you are one of the top teams in the Premier League, you don't really have any serious dominance over the league, and you haven't won it in 3 years' time. So you're going to want to end that run, and you're also going to want to dominate the league in the sense of winning it 3 times in a row. I always feel like if you've won the trophy 3 times in a row, even back-to-back is really good, but 3 times in a row is when you're really rubbing it in, and that's when you seriously have a good handle on the league and you're dominant there. Champions League football, winning, the Champions League and whatnot, I feel like that's always you're only expected to reach the semi-final. So not the final itself. It's a bit of a high goal, but you should be able to do it. The Premier League itself is just outright win the Premier League. So I feel like the board that you have are not going to stand for any substandard performances, really. But Champions League, winning cup trophies is always a bit of luck, a bit of quality, and a bit of, good timing, to be honest. I feel like cup competitions, they don't necessarily reflect quality so much, so it reflects the performance on the day. So, you can't expect to win Champions League trophies back-to-back or 3 times in a row or any of that sort of business. You kind of just build for your league, dominate your league, and that should equal into you dominating and maybe performing well in the cup competitions and winning 1, 2 or 3 or whatever. But either way, that's what makes Manchester City an interesting prospect to take over. There's a lot to work with here. You haven't got any Champions League trophies at all, so maybe you could set yourself that target as well. Could definitely do with some adding to your trophy cabinets in terms of the cup competitions, because you don't have as many as other top teams, I suppose. And the Premier League trophies, of course, you've only won 4, and you can definitely improve on that. So, in terms of the episodes, obviously in the title, but we will be trying to set you up best tactically for future success, long-term success, and also we'll be telling you having a look at the squad and seeing, how to get the best out of them, of course, but also who you should sell, who you should keep, maybe areas that you might need to invest in, and then we can have a quick look at these general things, sort of just a general guide, really. But anyways, one of the first things I like to do is actually have a look at my staff. So, in terms of the staff themselves, I just try and find out of the coaching team who has the best judgment of ability. So my assistant manager seems to be the perfect candidate for that. You also do want to consider how long your assistant manager has been at the club, or anyone that you're trusting, how long they've been at the club, because they need to know the players. So keeping that in mind as well. Dominic has been there for a year's time. He should know the players, but obviously longer the better. But for now, he is our best bet, so we'll go with him. Another thing I like to do is actually go to the under 23s and under 18s, have them both, marked or checked or whatever you want to call it, and just see if there's anyone worth of quality who I can move into the first team squad. So 2.5 stars is generally good. Patrick Roberts seems to be ready for the Premier League, but unfortunately for us, you can't recall him, and I could assume the same for Douglas Luiz and Joe Hart. So these are all on loan, so it doesn't look like anyone else would be any real option. The next player that you can actually call up to the first team is definitely not ready for Sky Bet League 2 ability. The other thing I like to do is actually have a look at age. Anyone over 23 shouldn't be in that squad, so you've got these 3 here, but of course, once more, they're out on loan, so I think we'll be okay. Next thing to do is actually have a look at the squad and see whether we've got enough numbers. So I like to have a squad of 22 players. You've got 23, so that's good to see. 22 is my magical number. I like to have a starting 11 of leading, star or world-class players, and then a backup 11 of youngsters who have potential to become star, leading or world-class players. And that way you have a nice little balance to your team. You've got 2 players per position, and that kind of sorts itself out rather quite nicely. In terms of happiness, morale, all that sort of business. The next thing to do is actually have a look at ability. How can I bring out the best out of my squad? So I try and normally check my best 11 players in the squad, so that goes up until about Sterling, and I try and squeeze all 11 into the same team, same starting exile, but of course that's tough, and so just having a look at the first team, it looks like, or best 11 actually, it looks like Manchester City, much like a lot of top teams, they're set up with a 4-2-3-1 formation. There is an option, of course, of going with the 4-2-3-1 where it's literally just attacking midfielders, but I feel like you've got wingers at the club who are naturally wingers as well. Sterling, maybe he can play an attacking midfield, but how good of a job could he do there? You also have Sané to consider, and he's not even an attacking midfielder at all, I think. So yeah, just little things like that. So it kind of made sense to just go with the winger formation instead of an attacking midfield. And I've gone with the option instead of playing a regular 4-2-3-1 wide, just by looking at it, you've got Kevin De Bruyne who can play in central midfield as well, and David Silva in central midfield too. You've got a striker, another central midfielder, a winger, a centre back, left back, goalkeeper, centre back, and another winger. So just bearing that in mind, it looks like 4-2-3-1. So now we have a general idea of what our formation is going to look like. You can actually see whether we've got the correct numbers in the correct places. So goalkeepers, we've got 2. It seems to be the perfect combination in truth. Ederson is your leading goalkeeper, your first choice goalkeeper according to Dominic here. Leading player for most Premier League sides, and he can still improve as well. So he seems to be the perfect candidate for a starting 11 player. So in terms of a backup 11, you've got the Chilean international Claudio Bravo. Now he's a good player for most Premier League sides. He's unlikely to improve, of course, because of his age, and it's likely that he will actually decrease. In terms of history, he's been at Manchester City for just 1 season's time. You kind of have a decision to make. He's 34 years of age. He will likely decrease soon. Goalkeepers don't tend to decrease in ability as quickly as normal goalkeepers. But if you ask me, very capable backup goalkeeper. Now the question is what you decide to do. Do you want to get his high wages off? Because having a backup player you're paying 115k wages is really a lot. So maybe your best bet would be, you can definitely stick with him. He's a very capable backup. He's an international as well, so plenty of experience. And, he'll probably help your first team goalkeeper Ederson as well. But like I always like to say, my combination of competition in the squad of 2 players per position, the whole point is to have a youngster who has potential, who can eventually overtake that player. So it looks like you kind of have a bit of unbalance here, where Ederson's that youngster, but he already is a first team player. So your options are either keep Bravo as a decent backup until he actually fully declines and he's no longer ready for the Premier League, for example, or he drops to a decent Premier League level and he's not performing well, or your other option is actually just sell him off. You would get some decent money from 11.75 million is not bad. His wages is too high as well, and then you can spend that money on bringing in a youngster goalkeeper who can compete with Ederson. And you could easily play, Ederson in the Premier League, for example, as your first choice goalkeeper, and then just play that backup goalkeeper in all cup competition games. And that way, they're both kind of playing a similar amount of game time. Ederson will be getting 38 guaranteed games per season, and your backup goalkeeper in cup competitions should probably get just about 20 games if your team's performing well in all cup competitions, of course. So just bear that in mind. That's a place where you can make a decision. But in terms of depth, you've got decent depth. In terms of the right back position, you've got Danilo and Kyle Walker. Once more, looks like it's a bit of an area of strength. Kyle Walker is your leading fullback, leading player, and your starting 11 player. Unfortunately, Danilo is just considered a good Premier League player, and at 25 years of age, it's unlikely that he will actually improve anymore. Maybe with a run of good form, his ability might change a bit, but might be a hint too late for it. But 25 years of age, good backup. You definitely can't sell him because you literally just bought him for 26.5 million. So you're going to be stuck with him for at least a season's time. Your real issue here actually in terms of right back spot is that Kyle Walker is expecting first team football, and the same is can be said with Danilo. He's on 80k wages, which is a little bit high for someone who's going to be a rotational option in truth. But you know, you're going to have to manage these two players expertly to not only get the best out of them, but at the same time to you know, make sure that they don't become unhappy. You also have to keep an eye on Danilo cutting inside from the right wing. You don't necessarily want that. He isn't an inverted wing back, so it kind of doesn't make sense. We're not playing him in that position, in that role rather. So cutting inside doesn't do us well. You're going to want to try and get a coach to stop that. I don't think Walker's got anything of that sort. No. Alright, so that's your right back position. In terms of centre backs, it looks like you've got 5. We only need 4. But the good news is, of course, that Tosin is not good enough, and for some reason he's included in the first team squad. So your best bet, he's a Sky Bet League 1 player. Just move him down to under 23, send him out on loan. And it looks like he's got decent potential to maybe become a first team in the future, but not right now. So that leaves you with these 4: Company, Otamendi, Mangala and Stones. Your first team options seem to be Company, and according to the coach himself, Stones is better in terms of ability to Otamendi, but this is where something strange sort of happens. Otamendi is a leading player for most Premier League sides, and Stones is only considered a good player for most Premier League sides. He's got plenty of potential, but he's not quite just there yet. So in terms of, you know, how you want to deal with it, I feel like the best bet is already in the squad status. So Stones is already just a rotational option. It's the kind of football that he's expecting. It kind of makes sense to keep him as a backup. And according to the ability, Otamendi is better. So we've gone with a Company Otamendi combination. It also makes a bit more sense because you don't want 2 ball-playing defenders together. So in terms of backups, Stones is a perfect backup, a youngster with plenty of potential. He can overtake Company Otamendi one day. You know, both of them are towards the ends of their career, I suppose. More so Company. But the other backup, Mangala, is a bit of an issue. He's considered a good player for most Premier League sides. He's a rotational option that was on really high wages. The same can be said about Stones, but at least Stones will improve and become a first teamer. And with 22.5 million in the bank and 100k with you in terms of wages, you could probably invest that in a better youngster who has plenty of potential, who can become a good partner to Stones. And so I feel like that might make more sense. But in terms of a backup option, he's very decent. French international, you know, attributes are really good and all that sort of business. It's just kind of up to you sort of decision. But if you ask me, you could definitely move him on. The problem is you'll be making a huge loss of about £20 million. So if you can live with that, then that's okay. He was out on loan to Valencia last season where he made plenty of appearances. The likelihood is that he would be wanted if you did try and sell him, but maybe some clubs will be worried about his wages. So at least your centre-back position sorted in terms of the starting XI. The backup, 1 player is sorted, but the other backup, Mangala, you might want to keep an eye on, because this is kind of the perfect time to sell him at 26 years of age. It's likely that you won't be able to get more money than you would now. Mendy is your only left back, and that's the problem. He's out injured, but fortunately for you, it's not like in real life. It's just 6 weeks to 2 months, so you don't need to necessarily bring anyone in terms of, you know, a loan option or anything. He should be back before the season begins or just around there. The problem is though, he's a very decent backup option for now. You know, you could trust him to, you could make him your first team option and trust him to become a leading Premier League player. And he's also expecting first team football. He's a 22-year-old French international, kind of really perfect for your team as a backup. The problem is you also don't have any other left back, so it's definitely an area you need to invest in. The question is, how do you do it? Do you trust Mendy to be your starting 11 player and bring in a backup with backup youngster with potential, like we always say, or do you actually invest in the top left back and let Mendy be the rotational option and just sort of let them compete with each other, and that way, you know, each player knows that their place isn't necessarily safe. If you do decide to do that, just bear in mind top fullbacks are very hard to come around with, to be honest. They're very rare in the game. I think less so in Football Manager 2018, but certainly in 2017 it was very tough to find any top fullbacks. But I still think even in 2018 it's a bit easier to find, but at the same time you have to invest a huge amount of money, 80 million or something, for example, like a player like Alaba. So it's tough. You might want to look into just bringing in a youngster. It depends on how much money you've got as well and how much you're willing to part away with. But definitely a left back is needed. One is not good enough, and especially because he's out injured. So in terms of central midfielders, Yaya Toure, Fernandinho, Fabian Delph probably, Ilkay Gundogan. They are your 4 natural central midfielders, but we tried to bring out the best out of our squad, which means we dropped Silva into the central midfield position. And unfortunately, that means someone in central midfield is at risk. We wanted to play Silva and De Bruyne in the same team, so it kind of made sense to drop one of them. Silva is the older player at 31 years of age. He can't necessarily do all the running that Kevin De Bruyne is expected to do, higher up the pitch and whatnot. So it kind of made sense to just try and protect Silva a little bit more. 31 years of age. We will elongate, I think it's called. We'll basically hope to make, by dropping him to central midfield, hopefully his career would be longer as well. At 31 years of age, he's a star player, I think. Yep, so he's even if he does decrease, he's still a top player for your team. So we have to keep that in mind. That means we have 5 central midfielders. Gundogan's the other starting 11 player. He's a leading player for most Premier League sides. It looks like Torres dropped off heavily in the game, and now he's only considered a good player for Premier League sides. Fernandinho is a leading player. So he's the perfect backup, to be honest. Maybe a little bit too perfect in truth. He's happy with the rotational option, which is... No, wait, that's the wrong one. He's expecting first team football, which is trouble, of course, for your side. So maybe if he doesn't become happy with his first team football, 32 years of age, then maybe the best thing to do is to move him on. 100k wages as well. You might be better off spending that money in a youngster who can eventually overtake Gundogan or Silva's positions. But yeah, so that leaves you with Delph as well, who's just a good player. So really these 3 here are all considered good players for the Premier League. So your options are, you've got one who you definitely have to sell, and if you ask me, even though Torre might be better in quality and might suit us best, he is also the oldest player and on really high wages for a rotation option, so it might be best to move him on for sure. That leaves you with Fernandinho and Fabian Delph, and this is where you have you have to consider, do you want to move them on and bring in youngsters with potential like we mentioned for both positions, and that way you have better options, I suppose, rather than just good players for the Premier League, or do you have to, for example, consider keeping Delph because he is an English player and homegrown player and that sort of thing kind of matters. Well, really matters, to be truthful. It's in the squad registration rules, so you have to keep that in mind. You also have Fernandinho, 32 years of age. It's unlikely that you'll be able to sell him at any better time for better money. 21 million, 100k wages. Again, too much for a rotational option. If you bring in a youngster, even if they're a really good youngster and you spend a ton of money on them and the agent's greedy and all that sort of business, the likelihood is the most you're going to pay for that youngster who's going to be a rotational option is about like 60k wages. And the money will be just around here or thereabouts anyways. So just keep these things in mind, but you definitely do have too many players for the central midfield position, so get rid of Torre at least. It'll be tough. 190k wages, and his contract ends at the end of the season too, so maybe someone will try and sign him at the end of the season instead. Teamwork and work rate is definitely not good enough for the squad. But anyways, that moves us on to the attacking midfield. So it looks like you got Kevin De Bruyne and Phil Foden. Kevin De Bruyne's obviously your first teamer. Foden is not good enough. He's a Sky Bet League 1 player. So in fact, you could get away with moving him down to even the under 18s because of his age. And just send him out on loan and hope he becomes a better player. But this does mean that you need to invest in attacking midfield position. If you don't want to do that at all, you can consider retraining, one of these 3 players that we said we have too many numbers. Torre, Fernandinho, or Delph. You could possibly retrain for the attacking midfield position. That way you've got a backup player there and you don't have to reinvest anywhere. Just bear in mind their ability temporarily drops while they're being retrained, but it definitely is an option for your team if needed, if you don't want to spend money, of course. But if you ask me, best bet to bring in is obviously, like I always say, a youngster with potential. So that moves us on to strikers. So you've got Aguero and Gabriel Jesus. For some reason he's considered an inside forward on the right, but that's not where we want him. We need a striker, a backup striker, a youngster with potential like we mentioned. So this is really the perfect type of partnership that you want to go for. Gabriel Jesus, rotational option, 75k wages, Brazilian international. tons of potential. And then you've got Aguero, who's a ready-made player, prime player, a star player for the Premier League. Fans love him. He has a susceptibility to injuries, which is a bit of a worry. But with Jesus there in the wings, just waiting for his opportunity on the bench, it's perfect. This is exactly the type of competition I want between two players in the same position. And that leaves us with our wingers. So you've got Sterling, Silva, Alexander here, not Silva, De Bruyne, Sané. So you got 4, which is the perfect number that you're looking for. The question is, do you have them in the right areas, and are they good enough? It looks like Alexander's not one of those players. He's a Sky Bet League 1 player as well. So once more, send him down to under 23s and give him some loans. Sterling, Silva and Sané are going to be your first teamers. We try to squeeze in Silva and Sané into the team. Silva's already a leading player, and he's a youngster potential as well. At the same time, he can become a star player. And with Sané, he is the only attacking midfielder on the left. Sterling's not a natural there. He can, though, do a decent job as an inside forward. He does also naturally, as his player trait, cut inside from wings. So, you may want to consider retraining him there. But the truth is, Sané at the moment is a better option for us there. And that's why he's a first teamer. Sterling, though, is expecting first team football. So, how do you manage that when you've got Silva, both Silvas, De Bruyne, all these players expecting first team football? Apparently Silva isn't, but he certainly is a better player than Sterling is. So it doesn't matter, to be honest. So in terms of that sense, you definitely need to improve in the wing position. The question is, do we consider Sterling a right winger or a left winger? My best bet is just keep him playing in the position he already is a natural in. You could possibly try and retrain him as an inside forward on the left, and that way you got Sané and Sterling fighting with each other. It also means that it suits his cut inside from both wings. But if you do play him on the right as an, if you ask me, actually, my advice is to retrain him on the inside forward left position. I feel like inside forwards suit up our tactic more, and he already has cuts inside from both wings, so just try and retrain him. Eventually his ability will suit the position and he'll become a natural, and he'll be just fine in the inside forward position. Composure might need some work, but he is a youngster with plenty of potential. English player, you don't want to move him on. Long shots could do some work, but otherwise he's got the vision, he's got the finishing, he's got the acceleration and pace. He's what you look for in an inside forward. So if you consider Sané and Sterling are two youngsters battling it out, that's another pair of players that I like, a type of players I like to have. Two youngsters battling it out if I don't have a prime player and a youngster to compete in the same position. And so you can expect the same with Silva. Try and find a youngster, a young right winger inside forward like Silva, and have him battle it out with Silva for first team place, basically. He naturally cuts inside from both things as well. So in truth, the positions you need to invest in without actually, let's say you don't actually sell anyone, and you're literally doing it just for pure numbers. The numbers you need are Mendy, you need a left back, and you need a right winger. That's without a doubt. And then anywhere else, that's where you start to try and improve the squad. You move some players on, you bring some on, that's up to you. But at the moment, where you certainly need to invest in is a left back and a right winger. That's where you need to buy your players. So that moves us on to our tactics. We know we're playing with a 4-2-3-1 formation, a very attacking formation, and we are one of the top teams in the league. So let's have a quick look actually where we are expected to finish in the Premier League. That is season preview. We're expected to finish first, so we're supposed to win the league according to our board as well as according to the season preview. And this isn't even without investing any players in the squad just yet. So we know that. So we know we want to play with an attacking formation and attacking tactics as well. So we've gone with control, structured team shape, and instructions are very basic of shorter passing, tighter marking, and an offside trap. Now the logic here is obviously to be playing a pass and move type of football, attacking football. You want to be able to keep the ball well as well, because you do have good passers, and it just kind of makes sense that you've got technically good players, and so we've gone for this type of tactic. You can definitely put more team instructions if you like. I'm just the type of manager that likes keeping it as simple as possible in terms of team instructions. Playing a team shape of structured also makes sense for me because of the lack of team instructions, and because I like each player to play according to their role. When you have a team shape of fluid, it seems to make sense to have a bunch of team instructions because the whole team is attacking and defending together, so team instructions kind of becomes a bit more important. That's kind of my understanding of structured and fluid. I feel like everyone kind of struggles with it, but it's such a flexible thing, I suppose, that you could go with anything. But my preference is structure gives you better team shape, and it helps with me with my kind of instructions where I don't have too many. So bearing that in mind, we're trying to play everyone in as much of a natural position as possible, a natural role to them, the role that they're most comfortable in, but also what suits us as a tactic. So Ederson's a sweeper keeper naturally on support duty. He tries risky passes. The type of players we're looking for are risky passing players, players who dribble, players who we don't necessarily want crossing too much, to be honest. So that's why I was saying inside forwards suit us more, because they don't cross. I think it says cross less often. Yeah, so the cut inside isn't really the bit we're looking for. We're looking for more risky passes, dribbling more, good movement from our players. If you want to play pass and move football, you have to see a lot of good movement, like moving into the channels, roaming players. These type of roles are perfect for your team that you're looking if you're trying to play this type of football. Unfortunately for us, Sane though is just a winger. He's left-footed as well, suits us. You might want to retrain him to get rid of the cut inside from both wings, because he's supposed to be a natural winger. And it also helps that Mendy's naturally a fullback on attack duty, so these two suit each other quite well. Silva is an inside forward in his favoured position, favoured role as well, so to complement him we've got Walker as a wing back on attack. It might not be his most comfortable role, but he can definitely do it if we have a look at his attributes as well. And inside forwards, wing backs support inside forwards really well, much better than fullbacks, so it just made a bit more sense. His decision making in flair is a bit of a worry, but that's going to be a worry anywhere, even if you are playing a fullback, where it doesn't say that he has to necessarily have decision making. Obviously, naturally, decision making is needed whether it's highlighted or not in the game. So that's how we kind of worked it out on the flanks. In the centre-back positions, Otamendi is more naturally, he prefers playing in the left back spot, so we got him as a central defender. Kompany's a ball-playing defender as well, and he doesn't have any preference. Oh, he does actually have a preference to play on the right, so it kind of works together. But if you ask me, I'd rather have a ball-playing defender on the same side that I'm playing a roaming playmaker on. Ederson as a super keeper, we mentioned already, suits us really well, and the reason is because we're playing an offside trap as well. So just in case Otamendi and company get beaten, we do have someone who can come up and sweep up behind them. The question is whether you want to play him on support or defend. It depends on how much of a risky pass you want him to take, but assuming we like naturally risky players, we're going to go with the support duty and hope for the best, in truth. In central midfield, we've got Silva and Gundogan. This is where the players... Really, the midfielders where the players are most uncomfortable, in truth, but they all can do the job very well. So we've got Silva as a central midfielder. Can't play both Gundogan and Silva as attacking advanced playmakers. That's what they're both most natural in or prefer. But we can't do that, obviously, so we've gone with a deep line playmaker on support. So Silva's going to play as the holding sort of midfielder. I'd love to play him as a defending deep line playmaker, but his positioning is really poor, so it kind of made sense to play him on support. Even on support, the deep line playmaker holds his position, so he should do that role quite well as well, and that way we're getting the best out of his vision and passing. Gundogan himself, we can't play two deep line playmakers, that's two holding players, so it doesn't make sense. So unfortunately we're going to play him in the uncomfortable role of a roaming playmaker. It suits our tactic really well. He does have the attributes for it, he's just not necessarily too comfortable with the role, but it suits him. Plays the 1-2, dictates the tempo. He should play really well in that role. De Bruyne is an attacking midfielder. The options really were an attacking midfielder or a shadow striker, and the reason is we need overlapping partnerships. We need our more advanced players to play support roles, and our more defensive players play attacking roles, so that they overlap and actually beat the players, the teams that are playing more defensive and whatnot. So attacking midfielder or a shadow striker really are only two options. Believe it or not, advanced playmakers on attack duty don't necessarily get beyond the striker. Ngashi stays central and they don't really move too much, and trequartistas of course just float around, and that doesn't suit us at all. So shadow strikers and attacking midfielders are only options. De Bruyne can definitely play as a shadow striker, but I feel like his vision might go to a bit of a waste. He definitely has the attributes for it, the finishing and all that, but I feel like he's a hint more suited to the attacking midfielder role according to his what he favors, and at the same time it helps that the vision and passing is included in that, and there's still finishing, so I've gone with the attacking midfield role. Aguero, we're just playing him in his most preferred role, which is trequartista. More risky passes, moves into channels, dribbles more, roams from position, all that sort of business. My only worry is that they don't close down a lot and they ease off tackles, which is not what we're looking for, but it's best to play him in his most suited role according to him, and he's definitely got the attributes for it. You can play him as a false nine, I suppose, but I feel like you'd be wasting his acceleration and pace, I guess. But playing him as a trequartista, and what he prefers best should bring out the best out of him. And at 29 years of age, his pace should start to drop very soon, in about 2 seasons time or so. So maybe the best thing to do is play him in a role where he doesn't have to rely necessarily on his pace. But anyways, this is the eventual overlook of it all, so it seems to make most sense. If you ask me what you should eventually work towards to get the best out of this tactic, team instructions and mentality and all that sort of business, you can keep it as is, but the roles definitely do need to change. I feel like a complete forward on support suits best. They play risky passes, they hold the ball up well, they dribble more, and they roam from position, which is what we're looking for. And I feel like shadow strikers have better movement than attacking midfielders, and they should get beyond the complete forward as well. And in the same sense, they have dribbling more, risky passes, get further forward, and they move into the channels. So having a striker who roams and having a attacking midfielder who moves into channels, that combination is just perfect and deadly. I already mentioned inside forwards. I feel like they're your best bet in terms of the wing positions, so maybe go with another inside forward, work towards that eventually, and definitely another wing back here to complement that. Like I mentioned, I'd rather a ball playing defender on the left, because I like to have my roaming playmaker on the left, because that means they can shoot with their preferred foot, which is the right, and it suits them. But if your roaming playmaker is a left footer, then that means obviously play him on the right. But if we assume he's here, then it means the ball playing defender can find him better as a roaming playmaker. And I feel like two playmakers in midfield doesn't do well, even though it should be okay. You should survive because you're top team as well. What you should eventually work towards in terms of your holding midfielder is a ball-winning midfielder on defense. You need at least one of these, starting players here who are willing to hold the line and really just try and win the ball back, because you don't have anyone here who necessarily closes down too often. And yeah, he's the only player who doesn't dribble, he's the only player who doesn't play risky passes, he holds his position, closes down much more and tackles harder, so he should really be the aggressive player that you need in your team to hold everyone else together, all these very playmaking type of players. So this is what it should eventually look like. And I feel like this is a bit your best bet. If you're uncomfortable playing with a 4-2-3-1 because of the risks here in midfield, as it says here in the game, some minor issues because you're not playing a defensive midfielder, you can definitely play the 4-2-3-1 that's more defensive, and you'd still have the same roles, so it's perfect, and that would suit your team quite well as well if you wanted to. But just work with how your players are best. This isn't the best way to get out of your squad, because a lot of these players, the starting 11 average role suitability dropped when I changed it to all these roles. So just try and have a balance between playing the players in the preferred roles and playing the players playing the roles that suit your tactic as a whole as well. So I feel like we've really covered everything. We can talk about things very generically, I suppose. The team report is there's some lack of depth beyond Bravo, which is a bit strange because Edison's there. Defensive depth, I suppose we already kind of covered that. Overall depth is a bit of a reach, to be honest, but yeah, apparently you got a bunch of youth prospects, all that sort of business. Staff, you can always improve. A lot of these should be your best in the league kind of thing, but you're not for none of these categories, so that's a bit of a worry. Improve your staff without a doubt. Training, that kind of comes hand in hand. A lot of people have different preferences, but for me it's high during the season and keep pre-season, and keep it on balance, and then average during the season and same on balance. Match preparation, whatever my scout tells me. Schedule, you definitely can do with better friendlies and probably go on tour because you're a team who has the finances to back it, and that will improve your merchandise sales as well. Competitions, we already covered the expectations. Scouting systems being revamped, but you should have world packages for both your senior and youth packages, which is good to see that Manchester City already have that. Looks like you have a transfer budget of 80 million and wage budget available of 200k, sorry. And you've got a youngster who's coming in by the looks of it in January, a centre-back youngster. So you can keep that in mind when you make a decision about selling Mangala or not as well, that you do have a youngster with potential possibly. Just scout him and make sure that he is actually a youngster with potential. And I think that's kind of it in terms of the club. We already talked about the history and why you might want to take over Manchester City. The transfer budget, if you ask me, you're kind of more on the 52 million. I like to have it in the middle, leaning towards transfer budget. But if you have 80 million, you spend it all, you'd still have 200k wages. So it's a ton of money, but you do want to be a bit sensible, so I feel like maybe having it here would be a better bet, and you'd have a ton of wages to give out as well, because you do probably need to renew some players' contracts too. Finances, you've got 36 million, so you've got more money to spend than you do actually have in the bank, so be very careful about this 80 million. You might have it available to you, but if you did spend the whole 80 million, you would be about 50 million in debt. So just keep that in mind as well. No debts, which is perfect for you, but projections should improve. Your balance is going on the rise within, was this 2 seasons time. By the time you reach your 3rd season, you've already tripled your current, or actually even, I think it's times 10, isn't it? About times 10 your balance at the moment. So it looks like your balance isn't too good at the moment, just because Manchester City have spent a ton over the summer without you, of course. So just keep that in mind. But if you keep some money, your transfer budget is likely to improve as well. So just be very careful about how you spend your money, basically. Under 23s and under 18s players to look out for. You've got a ton of potential players here, from Foden to about Jason Denayer. You can expect at least 3 of these 5 players to be first teamers over the next few years. Patrick Roberts will slot into your team easily as an inside forward. You've got a ball playing defender here, which is perfect, and a wing back in Pablo. Advanced playmakers might not necessarily suit your team, but they can be retrained to play as attacking midfielders possibly, or even shadow strikers. It depends. Foden seems to be not too comfortable with either, but Brahim Diaz looks like he would be okay with a shadow striker role. But anyways, I think that can kind of conclude our episode. That's all for today. So if you did enjoy them, of course, please do hit the like button and subscribe for more daily Football Manager 2018 content. And as always, guys, thank you all very, very much for watching.